Our first guest is Nick Cruse, for the first time on the mother of all talk shows, a citizen journalist extraordinaire, co-founder of the revolutionary Blackout Network, and well worth watching. Nick, welcome to the show. Did I summarize the farcical nature of the Democrat campaign appropriately enough in my introduction? I watched the Kamala Harris, Oprah Winfrey farce, and I actually couldn't believe my eyes and my ears. For me, it's the worst yet. How do you see things?
Thank you for having me on, George. And things are quite bleak because we're seeing this merging with the Dick Cheney Republicans, the Reagan Republicans merging with the liberal neocons to form this unapologetically pro-war, pro-fascist party. When you listen to Kamala's speech at the DNC convention, for example, it's probably one of the craziest speeches I ever heard in my life. It was a speech where they declared that we will never pursue peace, that we will have an era of never-ending war. We had Kamala Harris that was criticizing Trump for being too weak on Iran, that was promising conflict with China, and they was fully supportive, and they continue to be supportive of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. Something else that Kamala Harris has done in her career was team up with far-right Republicans like Marco Rubio to condemn the UN resolution against Israeli terrorism in the West Bank. And as Israel is engaging in mass terrorism attacks in the West Bank, you have Kamala Harris still claiming that Israel will have her non-conditional support. So we have an administration that is promising never-ending war. We have a vice president that is criminalizing anyone who criticizes the war, like Chairman O'Malley of Uhuru. They going after dissidents for advocating for peace, like African Streams, Hampton Institute, Revolutionary Blackout. We face channel strikes, nonsense strikes. So we're seeing the liberal class cheer on, cracking down on dissent while advocating for endless violence. But at least they have a rainbow flag in their profile picture, George, as they are cheering for World War III.
Exactly. We've had this before. You're too young to know, but I grew up when the Democrats were in power in the United States and murdering millions of people in Indochina. So I know about the Democrats. I know about the liberals in America. But what we've never had before is what I call the imbecilic character of the political leadership. If you look at Joe Biden, if you look at Kamala Harris, and if you look at Donald Trump, you become afraid that such people could very soon wield such power.
These are the same people who been trying to convince the American people and the people of Europe that a small country known as Ukraine was going to defeat Russia, and they were going to put sanctions on Russia that would lead to the destruction of the Russian economy. Now, Russia's stronger than ever. Russia and China are closer than ever. It led to the rise of BRICS. Now we have countries seeking de-dollarization. And this is the moves of the neoliberal agenda. They made these moves, they made these declarations that was proven undeniably false. And it goes to your point, George Galloway, there's an incompetence in the ruling class as well as their bloodthirstiness. You will never have people like Bernie Sanders, Matt Duss, Marianne Williamson, all the NATO leftists. There's all these fake leftists who only care about gender ideology in this country. That's what they think leftism is, who cheer for war against Russia. The only thing that happened as a result of that is us being closer to World War III than ever. Germany and the UK economy is in shambles, while Russia's stronger than ever. And they will get upset and they will go after and criminalize people who advocate for peace with Russia, like once again Chairman O'Malley. And this has led the United States and the global working class not to be stronger. But this is the position of the Democratic Party. We will advocate for war, and anyone who advocates for peace is the enemy. They want to kill anyone. They want to lock up anyone who advocates for peace for Russia. who advocates for peace for China. There was a story how the Navy is planning for war with China in 2027. China's not our enemy. But if you
Mm.
listen to Kamala Harris, it's nonstop anti-China propaganda. They want to convince us because the Congress in the United States has a 13% approval rating, because Americans can't exist without popping antidepressant pills because our society is sick. They have to convince us that the Chinese is our enemy, that Assad in Syria is our enemy, that Nicolas Maduro is our enemy, and we engage in intense fascism and violent imperialism, not only just to create this culture of never-ending war, but to expound and expand on the military-industrial complex, because they've been raking in big ever since the start of the Ukraine conflict. You have Palantir, who have two CEOs who support both of the candidates, who made record profits selling AI targeting technology to Israel. So I want to make sure I add that, because that's very important to remember. It's all about boosting the profits of the military-industrial complex and leading us to ruin.
Yeah, although there won't be any profits for anybody if the balloon goes up and we end up in World War III. And I don't know what kind of life they think they'll have when they crawl out of their underground bunkers into the nuclear winter where everybody else has been killed. It is very difficult to understand the mentality of it. But let's go granular for a minute, Nick. This disaster now overwhelming Lebanon is final. It's terminal for the Democrats in Michigan, for example, where a huge part of the Democrat vote bank are Arabs, many of them Lebanese. I always joke, I spoke twice in Michigan. It's the only place I knew ever where the cops were supporters of Hezbollah and Hassan Nasrallah, had pictures of them in their cop cars. This is Arab Central, Dearborn, Michigan. The idea that Kamala Harris, who's presiding over a situation where Israel is destroying Lebanon, the idea that Arabs and Muslims in America are going to vote for Kamala Harris in the likes of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere is surely now a dead duck.
To admit that I am quite jealous of my Muslim brothers and sisters, because this is what I've been advocating for my Black community to have a mass exodus of the Democratic Party. Because trust me, George, what we are seeing is real. I don't even think it's being properly counted in the polls. I was in Chicago and I was on the ground covering the anti-genocide protests, and there's the generation has been mobilized very similar to the Vietnam War, to the Iraq War. Many people who didn't cover this issue, I've been covering this issue since day one. Ever since I started as a citizen journalist a few years ago, Israel Palestine was always on my mind, because I could tell that a genocidal action like coming from Israel will happen. But I seen a mass awareness, the likes that we never seen before. We had Biden appointees who resigned in mass. There was Lily Greenberg Hall, a Jewish appointee, who explained how the Biden administration has a culture of racism against the Palestinian people. There was another resignee that worked for USAID who made a report that detailed Israeli war crimes, and the Biden administration fired him. You had Aaron Bushnell, who self-immolated in an act of protest against the genocidal regime, because the Biden administration ordered the Air Force to help Israel with targeting, something that the media never talks about. So Aaron Bushnell's death is directly on the hands of the Biden administration. Do you guys think the Muslim American population don't know this? You guys think the peace-loving movement do not understand this? So there must be a reckoning. We cannot allow the establishment to devalue the lives of Palestinians by rewarding the Democratic Party with another administration. It's very important to keep the pendulum swinging and never allowing any wing of the establishment to gain too much momentum. We saw what happened when George Bush Jr. had two terms, had a lot of momentum. We saw what happened when Barack Obama had two terms, had a lot of momentum. Ronald Reagan, we need chaos, because the establishment, what they want one smooth administration with a ton of momentum. It would be catastrophic, George, if Kamala won. Like it would be because they would have the mandate to continue their genocidal actions. They would have a mandate to continue endless war with Russia. And don't get twisted. I have no illusions that Trump will be better. I think he will continue the wars as well. But we cannot ever allow the ruling class to have a mandate toward genocide.
No, quite. I mean, if somebody's actually committing genocide, the idea that somebody else who might come in might is self-evidently the lesser of two evils, because you don't have to look in the crystal ball to see what Donald Trump will do. You can look at what's actually happening under the Biden-Harris. But here's a tricky one, Nick. Right at the moment when a perfect political storm was gathering for Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party, when she was headed for an actual victory over the Democrats in at least one, but maybe three states amongst Arab and Muslim Americans. She was miles ahead in the polls. She chose that minute under the pressure of a bantamweight, a guy who couldn't get a gig in Britain, Mehdi Hassan. Nobody would cross the road to listen to him. She goes on his show and immediately capitulates to his framing of the Ukraine war. Yes, Putin is a war criminal. Of the regime change operation in Syria. Yes, Bashar al-Assad is a war criminal. Why did she do that? She did not need to do that. Why did she?
Yeah, I really wish my sister Jill understood that the establishment will call her a Putin puppet, a Assad puppet, even if she repeats the lies said by the regime. The only tool that we have is truth, George, even if the truth is inconvenient to the ruling class. So we must tell the truth to the establishment unapologetically about Putin and Assad and how they are forming an axis of resistance against the criminal United States empire who funds terrorist cells that was going after Assad, for example. The problem is there's been this long-standing culture of the left of trying to appease neocons by repeating their talking point, but having the good solution. Because Jill Stein's overall solutions are good when she called for the abolishment of NATO, pulling out Ukraine war, but it does not benefit us for us to repeat their talking points against Putin. This has been something that the left and the peace movement has failed to do. We need to humanize our enemies. Me personally, I'm a big fan of China and how they lifted people out of poverty. I love how they are helping build infrastructure in Africa and forgiving debts. I love their system of government that allow 80% of millennials to be homeowners, keep the average rent to 500 bucks a month. There's a lot of things to praise, but you don't have to be like me, George. But what you have to do is just advocate for peace, advocate for coexistence, and understand where the other side is coming from, which is what the establishment is terrified of, which is why they banned RT, which is why they are waging a war against journalists because they don't want the average population to understand the truth. So that's why it's very important for Joe Stein to unapologetically tell the truth about the
Exactly.
enemies of the empire, because we can't allow them to get away with the lie that meant to lead to more war.
Exactly. Nick Cruse, you're a star. Hope to see you back here soon. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows.